Cool, good too.
So we have
I'll take care of it.
Crystal from Meetup and myself from from IxDA are partnering together to throw this event for you guys. Yeah. And I know it can kind of get a little confusing. There's a lot of different organizations in LA and a lot of different events going on, but you know, the main point of this is that we're all one big family, and we're all here to kind of provide you the best of the best UX events. So that's why we're here. You know, we have a really great night for you. I'm gonna hit it off into our next couple of announcements. So for those of you who are kind of getting into the community and want to learn more about everything that's going on, obviously we have IxDA Los Angeles. We're the Interaction Designers Association. We have a local chapter here in Los Angeles, which I run, and that's part of a global organization. We have billions of, a ton of chapters all around the world, 70,000 members. It's a great community, and we have a conference that happens every year. The other thing is we have UX Meetup, which Crystal runs, which is a great organization. It is the largest UX meetup in the nation, in the world. Yeah, give it up for that. It's pretty amazing. It's a huge accomplishment. So you should follow her at lauxmeetup.com. And of course we have Steve Portigal. We have his Twitter handle. So yeah, so if you guys are you know, feeling the need to tweet, we have all the hashtags and Twitter handles up here. Please give a shout out to our gracious speakers and our hosts, and yeah. Okay, wait. So I'm gonna hand it over to Joel. Joel, be here. We're going to talk about a few community events.
Hello, I'm Joel, and I just want to speak to you about the UX Book Club of LA. So next week, there's Kim Goodwin's book, Designing for the Digital Age, and 2 more books in October. And if you want to find out more about that on Twitter, it's UXBCLA, or on Meetup, there's a UX Book Club of LA group on meetup.com.
Yeah, awesome. And then I'm going to open it up to the community. Do any of you guys have any events you guys want to talk about? Any cool things happening? Okay. Oh, yes, book drawing. We have a book drawing and a book signing coming up. Yeah, so courtesy of Rosenfield and Steve. So stay tuned for that. We'll be giving away 5 books. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Crystal.
Hi everyone, I'm so glad you're here, and what a fun evening it was. You know that band that came in? They just came in off the street and asked if they could play. And we're like, yeah, sure, come on. And they did. It was really, really fun. So we're a little bit spontaneous like that. So after we have Steve speak, we're going to go to an after party, and you guys are all welcome. That's where things get fun. So it's within walking distance, so you don't have to move your car or anything like that. The book drawing. It's like I've never used a computer before. So lynda.com was a sponsor for our last event. They currently have 2 UX positions open, and somebody in the room, I won't say who, just applied there, and they serve organic food for lunch every single day. They provide breakfast like that, and their benefits are amazing. So if you're interested in working at lynda.com, there are 2 positions open. One is a mid-level and one is a senior. This is a great event. This is actually Natalie and Noel and some other people are putting this on. For nonprofits, have a very difficult time with technology. We're inviting a number of nonprofits to come, and we're going to spend a weekend helping them. So we would love to have you guys really involved with that. I think it's a great idea. Very sweet. And another event, so these are the community announcements, is UX Future Play. And a bunch of different devices are going to be introduced, and we can just play with them, right? So Leap, Google Glass, that kind of stuff. And then we have a book club event that we just mentioned. Then there's a UX calendar, a community calendar of events, so you can figure out what's going on when all over the area. And there's a lot of stuff happening.
This is actually, if we want to go back to this, this is super awesome that Crystal put this together. There's, I mean, it's like all the amazing tech events in LA. So, like, if you want, there's, I mean, literally, there's at least an event a week. So.
She's got a giant submit.
Yeah. So if you have an event coming up, feel free to post it here. It's great that she's organized this for you guys. So feel free to use it. Use it as much as you can.
And also, you can put in save the dates, right? Because sometimes when we're planning, we are in that stage. So we accept those dates and mark them as tentative, so other people know not to, or they can avoid them if they want. Okay, so Convey UX is a conference that had the first conference last year. They were rated by a lot of different companies as like one of the top 10 to go to a year. And so we're going to be doing something very special with them. I can't tell you what it is, but in about 4 months, you'll know. So Anyway, they are sponsors of the event, and I want to now introduce Syndicate Blue, who this is the second time they have sponsored one of our events, and they are so sweet. So they even made a plate of food for me as if it's like my wedding, and like I don't get to eat, which is kind of true. But do you want to come up and speak about the group and tell us all the good stuff you guys do?
I'll run back through again if everybody will clap. Hi guys, come over here, Jody. I'm Mariette, Syndicate Blue. It's my coworker Jody, Syndicate Blue. If we did not have the chance to introduce ourselves to you when you came in, hopefully we can connect after the event. Thank you for having us again. We love sponsoring these events. If you guys don't know who we are, that's okay. We are an agency. We are a talent agency. We specialize in placing phenomenal people like you in really great positions, great jobs with great companies, some of which are represented here tonight. Belkin, where you guys at? Kidding. There. We really appreciate the opportunity to get to know you guys. And we love being able to hang out and get to know what's most important to you as a UI, UXer, I just got caught, or as an individual company that's actually looking for talent. So we would love an opportunity to, in some way, shape, or form, be a resource for you, a partner. So catch us in the back by the food and the sign-in desk. Thank you.
So all of the food and beverages that are here tonight were provided by them.
Thank you.
And on this note, I'm going to have Alberta introduce one of our favorite partners.
Yes, hi. Crystal is right. Rosenfeld Media is one of our favorite partners, and it's one of my favorite companies ever. And the reason I'm saying that is that where I don't have a book like Steve, I do on occasion speak my mind at different places. Yes. And every time I send a pitiful email to Lou Rosenfeld and say, hey Lou, I'm talking about this. What books do you have that you can give me to give away? And Lou sends me boatloads of books. To the point that he sent some books to England for a talk I gave 2 weeks ago. I mean, the man is phenomenal. And he's phenomenal not just because of what they publish, which is extremely high quality, but also because Lou is entirely committed to the IA community. He is an active member of the Information Architecture Institute. He supports it, he's an activist, and he's trying to bring the Institute to the next level. So by supporting Rosenfeld Media, we also support the IA community at large. Now, speaking of Rosenfeld Media, they just published this awesome book with an awesome cover that you see up there, which is Steve's book, and we're going to hear a little bit about it tonight, maybe if we're lucky. And Rosenfeld Media right now has a promo on their website where if you buy 4 books, you get the 5th for free. There's no discount codes. I mean, we have a discount code, what is it, LAUX 2013?
Something.
Yes, it's going to be in the slides. That gives you 30% off any purchase you make on the site. But they also have this promo where if you buy 4 books, the 5th you add to the cart is completely free. And they have just published this year 3 new books, so it might be something worth looking into. Oh, I timed out.
Sorry, this is my meditation thing.
Uh-oh.
I think I might need some help.
Uh-oh. Okay, we're timing out.
No?
Max. He's a test. Trying to get you into a bag. Really?
So every 40 minutes while I'm working at home, I take a 10-minute break, and I continue to sharpen my tools. I just wanted to say one more thing about the book. When we were discussing the book and bringing it here to the committee or the community and having a book signing, Lou was on that email, and he is so hands-on. It was completely remarkable, and we're just a user group. So to have somebody care about a group in Los Angeles is amazing. So anyway, I think we'll meditate for a while.
Unless I turn off the computer.
We'll bring up our next sponsors, and UserZoom has brought some really fun toys to the group. I don't know if you've seen them. They're really cute. It was totally surprising when they arrived at my house. I'm like, what is this? I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So I'll let him explain what it is and talk about the company.
Thank you. Thank you. They are binoculars, so you can zoom in on the user experience. It's a branding thing. One of the marketing guys in my team came up with it, and a couple of years ago, and for every trade show, we bring hundreds of them and we give them away. They're useful and for the kids or for concerts, whatever. So UserZoom. I'm Alfonso, the co-founder at UserZoom. How many people here have done remote user research? All right. I love you guys. So what we do is we specialize, we built a software platform for remote user research, in particular remote unmoderated, which is a very cost-effective way of obtaining data, obtaining user feedback. With our software, I timed out. With our software, you can do remote usability testing, you can do card sorting, you can do tree testing, you can do surveys, and so on and so forth. And the great thing about this method of unmoderated testing is that, again, it's cost effective and you can test people from all over the place. So I think remote testing is becoming very popular because, doing studies, conducting studies in the lab is great, but it's very costly and time consuming. So technology such as ours is helping you, designers and developers and product managers, be able to conduct user testing in a more cost-effective and easier and faster way. So that's what we do, and we like to say we zoom in on the UX. So that's why we have binoculars out there. There should be one for everyone. If someone takes 2 or 3 because you have 2 or 3 kids, that's fine. I don't want your kids to be fighting because of users. And so we're very glad to be here. We're sponsoring the event. I'm in Silicon Valley. I'm from Madrid, Spain originally, but I like California. I don't spend too much time in LA, but I love it being here. So thank you for
We'll
inviting
change
us.
that.
All right. You want to speak now?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not cheap, but we do offer, at the end of the year, it's very, very cheap if you compare to other research. She asked me, Alberto, of course, to talk about the university program, because we did launch this year a university program that basically provides a license to universities for free. You got one?
Yeah.
All right. And we do this because we want to contribute to the community, of course, number one. And number two, because we feel like if you use our software during your studies, hopefully you go to the market and you'll keep using this. We have a very good renewal ratio, so we feel like if you have a good experience, you continue using it. So if you're interested, userzoom.com. Thank you.
This is such a beautiful place, isn't it? It really is nice, and so actually, would you guys like to come up and talk a little bit about the space and being a member and that kind of thing?
First of all, thanks to IxDA, the LAUX, Crystal for helping set this whole thing up to begin with. We're so honored to host this event. We've been here for a year now. We're trying to help build this community here in Hollywood, and it requires you guys to come out to these type of events and join our community. So we're really appreciative of that. Thankfully, today we have Ted Kramer, who's come all the way from New York. He's our head of new market development. He's going to launch all of the WeWorks in Boston, DC, Seattle, And also, I think he's going to offer something special to you all tonight. Is that correct, Ted?
Absolutely. Hi guys, as Iyad said, my name is Ted Kramer. I'm the Director of New Market Development for WeWork. And for those of you who don't know, WeWork is actually the fastest growing co-working space in the country. We've got 8 locations in New York City, 2 in San Francisco, and 1 here obviously in Los Angeles. In the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to be in Chicago, DC, Boston, Austin, and Seattle. And really what makes us unique is we've got this beautiful venue, we've got the 4th floor, the 5th floor. We offer national access, a national membership when it comes to our co-working space. You have a space with us in LA and you shoot over to New York for a week of business, you always have somewhere to work. Whether, no matter what city we're in, you have a place to work out of. And we have options whether it comes to a non-dedicated desk, a dedicated desk, or an office for 1 person or 8 people. Companies such as American Express, Airbnb, Waze, Reddit, all work out of WeWork, and they work on a national scale with us. Most importantly, the deal that I wanted to tell you about was, if any of you have a meetup or have a group that you host and you need a space to launch a 10-person meetup, or you have 150 people who want to come, you always have a place here at WeWork. And guess how much it's going to cost you? Nothing. And for us, it's all about helping our members and helping you. Your success is our success. Your story is our story. We want to tell that story for you. At the same time, another offer that we're doing for people who are interested in membership, we're giving away, we're taking a third off every other month for 6 months, which in the end will probably tack off an entire month of membership with us. So if you guys have any questions, please come talk to myself, Iyad, or Ryan. We'll be here for the rest of the evening, and please enjoy the space, ask any questions, and we're really happy to be hosting the group here. Thanks for coming.
I also wanted to share with you that they actually paid for extra chairs and all kinds of things behind the scene. So this was not free for them to do, but they did it for us anyway. So on that note, let's go to Steve. Oh wait, let's go down for everybody else.
All right. Before we get Steve, I want to tell you how I heard about Steve. I heard this guy from IBM, Robert Kerr, he's a UX guy, talk about his experiences doing, sort of guerrilla testing in his office and bringing people over to his desk. And he kept talking about this guy, Steve, who asked all these questions. And Steve asked all the difficult questions, but he's also the person with the most insight. So I started looking for Steve. And on Twitter, I found a Steve that, talks about user testing. And so we reached out to him. I tweeted to him. It took a little bit before he noticed. And and in this discovery of Steve, I also discovered that he has a sweet spot. And so we are going to ask him to answer some of our questions after he's talked to us, but only after, this is only possible after he gets his sweet spot taken care of. So we'll do that before Q&A.
Everybody go there and then go back. All right, we got it out of our system.
My usual excuse to that is English is not my first language.
We're fine.
No, I'm just user testing, right?
Yeah.
This is user testing.
It's about us.
It's about us, right. Steve, coming up.
Just a note to the designers in the room. When it says book drawing, that doesn't mean we're going to draw anything, so I apologize. Oh, come on. It doesn't get better from here, I'm sorry. Thanks everybody for coming out, and I don't know, just really there's a rousing set of thank yous and everything. I don't know if we can sustain that that kind of zany energy, but I'm going to try. I have a logistics question. Who's going to give me the hook or give me the 5 minutes? Shut up, we got to go.
Just keep going.
Just keep. I don't do
Just
that?
keep
Okay. Okay. That's good. I did try to like right size this, but you know, once I get going, I like to talk about this stuff. So, all right. Okay. Okay. Today's talk is about interviewing users, uncovering compelling insights, and it'll be presented in a monotone. I don't know if you guys know this, but I've written a book about interviewing users, and I don't know if it's come up or not. Yes. I went at someone's recommendation before I came here. I wanted to get a little snack that I wasn't going to eat when I was here, and so I went to Musso and Frank, which I was going to go to, which is it's like crap, horrible, worst place on earth, and then it's like this oasis in time. Anyway, I walk in there, and maybe this is just how they're used to kind of treating people, but the host with his interesting accent that I won't imitate says to me, "Oh," says, "Are you a writer?" And you know, my mother would be very ashamed of me, but I said no, because I said yes, and then I had to explain this. So anyway, I don't know why I'm confessing that to you all. But, the reason I put this up here is not to, you know, in a cheap manner solicit your applause, but to point you to the page on the Rosenfeld site, and if you can't read the URL, just Google and find the Rosenfeld page. There's a tab there called Resources. There's all sorts of stuff there. So there's recordings of other presentations, articles, interviews, sort of more things that talk about these issues, as well as a bunch of templates and example documents and things that you can apply in doing user research yourself. So that's why I put that up there. Here's my part of California. This is Pacifica, just out of San Francisco, where that's like the sunniest day we're ever going to get in Pacifica. And then just I want to say where I'm coming from when I talk about research. There's so many different words. I'll hit this again in a second, but the phrase that we use is that we help companies to discover and act on insights about themselves and their customers. And you know, the discover is kind of the research and the act is kind of the design, but I've purposely kept it really vague and wishy-washy because there's so many different ways to discover and there's so many different ways to act, and really what I'm excited about is that connection, is finding out things and then not delivering reports, but kind of pushing that into some kind of action, and it depends so much on, you know, who I'm working for and what they're about and what the opportunities there are. And then this piece about, not only do we learn about customers, but we also learn about the organization itself. There's no sort of ideal research report, you know. It's all about who we are and what we believe and what our major malfunction is and what we've tried and what hasn't worked, and what we're learning is always in that context. And so, you know, I just always want to capture that. So that's kind of in our statement of who we are. I'm going to talk a little bit about the problems, or what's the thing that we're going to go do, or why is it that we think we need to do some research, and how do we think about what that even is? Where do the questions come from and the problems come from? So I've used the phrase interviewing users, and you know, when you get into labels of methodologies, it gets really ugly, and you know, the IA side of the house doesn't necessarily like this because things have to be neat and have good definitions. And not looking at anybody in particular here. And I actually pulled this list. I went on some websites years ago of consulting firms that do research, and they kind of do the, this is often for agencies, they do the Chinese restaurant menu system where, you know, 4 from column A and 2 from column B. You just get this laundry list of methods, and you know, and so you can have those conversations. Well, what's the difference between a contextual research journey and a video ethnography? I don't know. You know, my answer to all this is whatever. Like this conversation about methods this way can be really distracting, and so I want to offer you an alternative definition, or just a way to kind of think about it. So what's the thing that we're doing? We examine people, and I picked a really loose word there. I don't know what examine means. We're doing something about them and what they're about. The piece that I bolded here is the one that I think is most important in differentiating the kinds of research that I'm talking about. It's in their own context, and I'll say more about that. And I think when people approach research kind of naively, they think research is about, well, what are people doing? But really what we're trying to understand is, what does it mean? So that's mental models, that's values, that's that's culture. There's a lot of bigger things that come in. What does something mean? So, how many times are people syncing a device to keep it current, but also what's their relationship with that device, or what's their kind of framework for what syncing even means? How do they think these things kind of relate to each other? Those are the deeper things we need to understand, not just who's doing what and how often and how many. The second thing that we do is that we infer, and if you want to say interpret or synthesize, we make sense of things that are kind of really messy and sloppy, and we have to find a way to organize that and do something with it. And you can think about, this is what I think one of the things that's so, it's one of the strengths, sometimes it's seen as a weakness, but I think it's one of the strengths of this kind of research. You are an apparatus. You have a bias and a set of experiences, and you do something with another person, and you have a set of impressions and judgments and interpretations that are just, they're only going to be what you have. That's why we don't do this work alone, why we don't talk to one person. You kind of create many opportunities to have those things surface. But it's not laboratory science. It's a very human-to-human interaction. And so that's why this synthesis activity is just so important, because the data doesn't align itself up into a conclusion. You have to really work it, and part of working it is kind of coming from your own perspective. And the third, I think I kind of implied this already, you got to do something with it. Whatever that thing is, that has to be something that takes it further into a design or business problem. Sweet liquor eases the pain. Yeah, I mean, the point I think here is just to say that we can talk to people at any point. And this is really just more a model of what kind of problems we get asked to go ahead and move.
A little more volume in the back. I just want to cover our last 5 rows.
Okay.
Sure,
You want me to speak louder?
just a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Well, how's about that? Okay. People at the back, you're a little better? Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. This sort of represents the kinds of problems that we get presented in my organization. And this diagram in the middle, this arrow represents what, where a development process is. So at the beginning, we don't know what we're going to do. And so we're doing research to try to understand, well, what's going on with people, and help us come up with new ideas for things to do. The middle, which is really, I could blow this out into a lot of different steps. I've just kind of got one lump in there that refers to when we have an idea of the thing that we're going to make. We have a wireframe, we have a prototype, we have a storyboard, we have any kind of, we have a concept statement, we have just some conversations in the room about what we think it is. There's a point at which you think you know what you're going to make. And so the work that we do takes those ideas as a hypothesis, and so now you are asking a different question. And what I think often happens is when we do this piece in the middle, we often push back to the left and say, well, based on, we've put a stake in the ground in a thing, in a possible solution, but what talking about that solution has done is make us think differently about, well, what's the opportunity? What's going on with people? And then the third one is kind of obvious, that things get iterated. They go out in the world, they have a life, and then there's questions that come up about what are we going to do with our next one. So that's sort of a different stage. In the book, I talk about the difference between the business question and the research question. See, that'll be the research question. And what often happens to us as vendors, we get approached with one or the other, but not necessarily both. When we get approached with the research question, that's where someone says, we want to learn what do people care about when they're folding laundry. I made that one up. That's not a real one that I've done. And in order to do a good job at answering the research question, we have to ask the business question. Why are you doing that? What are you going to do with that information? What's going on in your company? Sometimes we get handed the business question. We need to be more innovative around a certain category of products. And then we'll work to create the research question. Well, what if we learned these and these kinds of things? I'm not even talking about research methodology, I'm just talking about what should the research answer. So what this slide is, I didn't say anything about the slide, it's actual deck of a technology company's some kind of backgrounder they were doing, and I redacted anything that was at all revelatory of their business. So you have things like social networks and China and privacy that are just sort of generic. But this is a document that goes around that says, here's what we're thinking about and what we're worried about. And so I made up in those call-ups, there's some sample questions that might be business questions that get implied from this. So what entertainment activity should this company be supporting to tap into China's growing middle class? So that's a thing, that's a business question. It says something that like, what are we going to do business-wise around this and this and this? And then the research question, and again, I'm making these up, but I just want you to see kind of the progression there. So it might be, what's changing about middle-class family life? What are the digital technologies that are being used? What are the analog technologies? And what's kind of the role that they're playing? So you guys see kind of the progression there from what the business asks, and then what the researcher has to ask. And then, and I don't have a slide about this, but the implication here is, then we would develop a methodology to get at this question. But you need, to do this well, and I think in a way that's kind of professionally rewarding and then brings all the value that you can bring, you need both. You need both. So depending on what one you're given, and this is for vendors or internal people as well, depending which one you're given, push up or push down until you have that system. Because often these things are implicit and no one's really sat down and kind of spelled it out. But to do it well, to come up with the right methodology and have it output something that answers the research question, you need to know what that business question is. Just nod. Thank you. That's good. Are they allowed to ask questions? I don't know. I'm told no. Yes, you can ask questions. Do we have mics for questions? Or do you want to just shout them out? Shout them out and I can repeat them.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, do you have a methodology for determining what kind of framing or concept you'll put together before asking these questions? So for example, you have your client who says, well, I want to monetize my social network. Do you have a methodology for determining the questions you're going to be asking the users? You literally don't...
I don't know if this is near you.
You kind of reinterpret what they're saying from what I'm seeing here, and I wonder, do you have a methodology for reinterpreting this or determining how to phrase the questions to make it more user-friendly, so to speak?
We're going to get in, I think we're going to get into that, yeah. I think we'll get into that. So I think we're just a little more high level of problem framing, then we'll get into questioning. I think that's coming up. So just a little rant here. Here's a thing, and John, I kind of started off on this today when I was speaking with you earlier. I started on a pain point rant, but I'll give it the more full throttle one here for you. This is a thing that a lot of groups sort of start with. They want to talk about pains and think that sort of their job is to find pains and fix them. And that's actually kind of it's a kindly impulse. It's also kind of a self-centered impulse, because things that you see as designers or as marketers or as engineers or as IAs and how the world could be better aren't necessarily what people care about. And by focusing on pain points, you can kind of get at the wrong problem. So, an example on the right, for instance, we went out and talked to a lot of people and we found they had drawers and drawers overflowing with obsolete technology products. Well, let's make bigger drawers for people so they have better storage. Right? If you understand the pain point that way, then you understand the solution. The pain is storage. But really, if there's something, this is a silly example, but you guys are nodding, so thank you. It's meant to show that if you focus on the wrong thing, and that's your own framework about what problems people have, as opposed to understanding something more nuanced and richer about obsolescence that's really going on, that's just a symptom of something. The paint can example is just about you know, the aftermarket, whenever I ever bought paint and tried to pour it and open it, and that opener there, they give that to you at the paint store. The can doesn't open without one of those things. And if you pour paint, even with that little aftermarket Tupperware lid that I bought, you end up with a paint can full of drips like that. And so, you know, there's all sorts of solutions that are already in there, like that aftermarket lid, but there's the real question's not being asked there. And you know, the design opportunity, and I think it's Dutch Boy created like their own can. They kind of rerouted around the system as a way to kind of differentiate. I don't know if those are still available, but that was kind of their innovation there. But you have to, you know, the problem is lies below the surface, and so asking the pain point question doesn't always get you to the richer thing. Do people know the word satisficing? Yes. If you don't know the word, tonight's gift, in addition to binoculars and sushi, is satisficing. It's a combination of suffice and satisfy, I think. Is that right? I always blow that. It's a great word because it just talks about how tolerant we are of things that are good enough. And, you know, well, you can always just look around here, like, I mean, I think, you know, we're all right. This is perfectly appropriate. It's not a critique or anything like that, but there's just all kinds of cables here coiled, you know, and I could fall on my face, which would be cool in some way, but also not. And, you know, we're fine. I mean, what it would take away for us to kind of fix this and make it kind of safe, it's like, we'll just deal with it. It's fine. And when you go out and look at people and what their, quote, pain points are, you often see satisfices. So here's an example on the left. This is from actual field work. And you can tell how long ago it was by the era of the monitor. So that fax machine is sitting on top of the monitor, and it's basically kind of hanging there. The only thing that's kind of keeping it there is the tension of the phone, the cord that goes to the wall. Because, you know, it's a 2.5 foot cord, and she really needs a 3.5 foot cord. This is a woman that is newly separated from her husband, has an 8-month-old. Was just in absolute crisis when we interviewed her. The husband, who was in the military, burst into the interview. In my mind, he was wearing his fatigues, but I don't know if that's really true anymore. It was about 10 years ago. Terrifying moment when he burst in. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And so everything that was going on when we were talking printing, so I have a picture of the printer and photographs and all this. Everything was about what was going on in her life. And so we saw this, you know, this fax machine hanging there. We know what the solution is. I mean, it's $1.89 at Target to buy one with another foot of slack in it, right? She's never going to do that. I mean, it's so low on her priority. This is good enough. And so, you know, you can see the problem. You can come up with a solution. The solution even exists. The real question is like, well, why hasn't she done it? And, you know, that's the meaning here. That's like what's important to her, what her priorities are. And so we can be seduced into seeing things that we think need fixing and create solutions that will never get adopted because the adoption energy totally goes over the pain. It's more than the negative part that the pain is causing. And I think even the example on the right is this blog, There I Fixed It, which is kind of an LOL users blog that posts pictures of stupid things that people do. The web seems to be really good at that, right? And you know, my thought exercise for you guys, I don't know how well you guys can see at the back, but it's a photograph of a drapery that's been nailed with a rather thick nail into the wall to hold it closed. And so we can laugh and go like, yeah, there I fixed it. Well, there's a solution. But I like just the thought exercise, and we don't have to answer this. I don't have a good answer for it, but just to sort of frame it like, well, in what circumstances is that a good solution? You know, maybe what we think of as satisfices and sort of negative solutions are actually perfectly appropriate and adequate, you know, ways of doing things. And we should waste our creative design energy in something else and not, you know, go try to fix those problems. That's my rant on that. Oh no, there's one more piece to the rant. And I know everyone likes to have a Microsoft bashing piece. So this is really more about advertising and sort of what the story of user-centeredness is. Do you guys remember this Windows 7 campaign? They had all these different people, kind of ordinary people walking around, showing about showing things that Windows did. Microsoft does a ton of, like, and when they do a new operating system, they do, they like go live with families for years. I mean, they do an incredible amount of work to do this, and yet their advertising agency kind of framed their user-centeredness as users ask for features, and we go build them. I just like the idea that, this woman, as tech goddess as she is, she's like, hey, Microsoft, I'd like to reduce the memory footprint, if you could, of the new OS. And the people at Microsoft are like, hey, great idea, tech goddess, we'll go right and work on that. I mean, that, and that Microsoft is telling us, the general public, that's what user-centeredness is. We take requests from users that we never thought of before, and we go off and do it. Right? And so that's kind of the pain points mentality, that the things that we're going to go off and make are simply being requested from people, as opposed to uncovering, something more rich and more elusive. Certainly if you do this, these are things that your competitors can do, because it's just being asked for. The things that are going to keep you ahead are the things that you have to figure out. I said before, synthesis and finding patterns for things that don't exist. Right? That's kind of where the good stuff comes from. I'm just going to skip this. Now here's kind of, I'll offer this as a key takeaway. You think about the fancy word sampling, right? Who is going to be in a study? Who do you want to go talk to learn from? Who you learn from is not necessarily who you design for. And I think that's a really important thing to think about. This is classic market research, right? You talk to the people that buy your product. And classic market research, you wouldn't have gone to talk to people that don't buy your product. But in this kind of research, we're trying to learn what we don't know. So you might talk to lead users. You might talk to people that are, hackers. You might talk to people that are making your thing and, putting it on Etsy and have got a Tumblr about ways that they've done something with your thing. Those are not your typical customer. But if you look at those people and see what kind of barriers they have overcome through their sheer force of will, you're going to see that those are the barriers there that you didn't even notice in other customers. If you go talk to people that should buy your product but haven't, or people that bought your product or used your thing and gave up on it. It might not be your thing, it might just be an activity. It might be about gardening, people that quit gardening. And so I don't mean that you should, I think it's overwhelming to consider all of those. This is just meant to be a list that should provoke you to think about, oh yeah, who else could we talk to? And then I think the box there is really the point here. When you get at these multiple perspectives, it lets you see things that you didn't know that you didn't see. And the cliche here is, whoever discovered water, it wasn't fish. Right? You can't see this stuff because you live in it. And this is about ourselves as well. And when you talk to people that are all representing a certain group, you won't know. You'll see some things, but there's going to be some things that you just can't hear until someone else tells you the opposite. And then you realize, oh yeah, that's a thing that makes the rejectors different than the lovers, because there's some totally different kind of thing here. And so again, you're trying to give yourself the chance to understand what's going on. So you're picking the users and creating the contrast to just flip those switches in your head where you get those aha moments and you get it. And sort of, nailing it from a sort of a statistical, scientific point of view won't sort of inspire you and kind of shake you up in that really kind of exciting way. Oh, the example on the right here, I spent a month in a project. It was supposed to be a 2-week project. We spent a month talking about who's going to be, this is for a global sporting goods apparel manufacturer company that I won't name, but you probably can figure out. And they told us, and it was like, this is the amazing thing about corporations and corporate culture. They would say this as if it was not a contradiction. Our customer is the high school lettered athletes who's going to get a scholarship and go on to college. And our website is visited almost exclusively by women between 24 and 35. And our question was kind of, well, who's going to be in the study? And they would just sort of repeat that over and over and over again. And it was just this, the problem was bigger than the project. I mean, this was a huge cultural challenge that they were having. And one user represented their own internal aspirations about who they thought they were and what made them feel cool about who they were designing for. Hence my Tom Cruise reference here. And the other was just their data told them that here's who's visiting our site. And we really spent a month trying to untangle this. And so you might hear one level I'm bitching about a frustrated client. On the other level, even just figuring out who's going to be in your sample is getting to the higher order issues that this research is meant to address. Let's say that recruiting is data. The recruiting process, when you can't find people, it gives you some data. Even planning recruiting is data. I talked before about, this is all about framing the problem. You're framing the problem here, even trying to agree on who your customer is. I think we've kind of covered that. This is a little bit about your question, and now we're sort of shifting into this a little bit here. And this is one of the resources that's on that tab that I pointed to. There's like a super field guide that just has many types of questions, and you might read that to get an idea of what questions could be like. So here's the thing: prep a document before you go out in the field that says what you're going to do when you go out in the field. This goes, I think, with the hashtag for today. Don't wing it. I was sort of surprised that I needed to spell this out, but I found myself on a project where I went out to Colorado Springs to working for another group, and I really just I couldn't get any info on what was happening, what we were doing, and I went out for this meeting, and we sort of spent the morning dealing with all of our gear. They brought a lot of gear and gave us all this gear and told us how to use it, and they said, okay, we're gonna go do the pilot study now, Steve, and they drove me off to some neighborhood and dropped me off at somebody's house, and said, we'll be back in 2 hours. And it was a little, kind of a scary moment, and I was kind of spluttering, like, what are we gonna ask them? Like, should we talk about it? And no, just go do it. And we ended up, that was the pilot, and then so I came back from the pilot, I'm like, okay, we need to get a bunch of questions together, we need to all agree, and they just, no. We ended up, I think, 4 or 5 teams working in parallel, and we didn't even have a common document. I know, thank you, that was good. Yeah. So it was kind of a nightmare. I mean, a project that starts with you being dropped off in the suburban neighborhood. It just went downhill from there. So I've experienced when we didn't do this. So do this. I think the second point is really important, and this is sort of what you're asking about methodology. I don't know if I have like a switch that you could flip, but I think this thing is important to think about. There's a difference between questions you want answers to and questions you ask. So this is why I get annoyed when I read blog posts from people that say, you can't ask people what you want, you can't ask people how much they would pay, you can't ask this. You can ask anything you want, as long as you sort of understand that question asking is sort of an artifact. So if you want an answer to how much people are going to pay, that's a methodological question. If you want to ask that question, it doesn't mean that the answers are going to be accurate, but they're going to be revealing of something. The how much do you pay question is great when you sort of ask why, because then people explain where they think the value comes from in your thing or what they think it's associated with. That's not a predictor of price points, but it's a way to reveal mental models. Okay, so you could ask the price question. I'm not saying that you can answer the price question. You wouldn't answer the price question by asking the price question. So your job in preparing this interview guide is to do that transformation, is to think about, how's the whole flow of the conversation going to go? I'll say a little bit more about this to try to answer your question in the next couple of slides. Like my Colorado Springs people, if you have this document, you can share it, and you can share it with people that are going in the field and people that are sending us in the field, so that everyone feels like, oh, the plan, and it's just really a stake in the ground as to what we think is going to happen. And everyone's put into that. So someone could say, hey, we're not talking at all about the competitive products. Can we talk about that? No problem. And the act of writing one of these, less so reading one, but writing one of these interview guides is for me, it's kind of a mental walkthrough of what the conversation is going to be. So I'll think about sort of, without having done one of these interviews yet, how would I structure it? How would I make it flow? And so that pre-visualization means that I'm actually really in good shape when I go into the field because I've already kind of run through it in my head in the writing activity. And that's, you don't have to, you can take as much time as you need to write and kind of reflect and edit and so on. Yeah. So there's sort of 4 chunks that I suggest you cover. And there's a couple of them are structural. But, for more, look at those sample documents. But here's the first thing, just the logistics. Introduce, here's why we're here, thanks for seeing us, we have this and this much time. You can say just a very little bit about who you are and what you represent. I wouldn't oversell it. I'm here to do some market research, it's probably, good enough. Some of this has come up when you've arranged to have them participate. The main body is really, that's the main thing they're going to do. Maybe there's different sections for each of the topics that you have. So you can kind of, think about, we want to understand, it's just almost, some people do this as a mind map, and I'm not a mind map person. I'm more of a list and subheader person. But whatever your kind of thing is, this is where I think you're kind of creating, I've done this sometimes where you just kind of create the flow at a structural level, like if you had a good outliner or a mind mapping tool to kind of do that. What are kind of the key topics, and then what are the things underneath that we want to cover? You might do that kind of structurally and then get to what are the actual questions. Me, I tend to sort of I tend to write. I'm more of a writer than a visualizer, so I'll kind of write questions and then kind of structure them. But, these are all, everything is kind of good here, I think. The third one, and this can be a small section, but at the end of the interview, you have permission to ask all sorts of crazy stuff. If we were to come back in 10 years, how do you think your laundry folding would be different? And you're not looking for accuracy there. It's not, well, no one's good at predicting their future behavior. That's fine. You're really just using the future lens to understand what their current framework is. And by getting them to talk about the future, this is where you say, if you're going to create an ad for this breakfast cereal, what would be in the ad? Or if an alien landed from Earth and you had to tell them how to use your stereo system, how would you show them how to do it? These are just more kind of ridiculous questions, and sometimes we feel uncomfortable doing them. I was working with a group the other day, and we had a dream question. I think it was a magic genie question. If a magic genie came here and could give you 3 wishes, what were the things you would ask for? And this guy was a great interviewer. I was watching him do it, and he wouldn't ask the magic genie question. And the conversation never got beyond incremental improvements, and we were trying to really understand something richer. And I asked him afterwards, like, you did this great interview, but you didn't do the dream question exactly as it was written. He says, yeah, it felt corny. And so, I think you have to also be willing to take that leap yourself. And this is why you do this at the end. You don't walk into somebody's environment and say, well, thanks for having us into your office. First of all, if there was a magic genie, what would you like to see? Yeah, I think you made the face, that's the face you would get. Who are you? Get out. And then the wrap-up question, the wrap-up section. So just, it's good, especially if you're new, to kind of write these things down. Give them the incentive, give them the copy of their release. Ask them if they have any questions, give them your card, whatever the thing you're going to do to kind of wrap it up. There's 2 classic questions that you can ask them at the end. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think I should have? That doesn't usually get anything, but sometimes it does, but it kind of hands it over to them. And then the partner to that question is there any questions you want to ask me? So if you want to talk about the study and its purpose and who you are, what company you represent and all that, that happens at the end. If you do it at the beginning, it totally screws things up. But you can talk about that at the end if you're done with this person. And so this gives them a chance to ask that. If they don't care, you don't have to pitch them on your methodology. But if they're interested, this is kind of a way to wrap it up. Is that starting to help with your question? Great. So if my Colorado Springs people, if we had just done this, it would have been so much better. This is just headings. Right? If you're an experienced field worker and you understand the topic that you're doing, you could go do a pretty decent interview with just, that. So just at least do that. But here's, and this is what you'll see, I don't know if this is an exact document, but this is sort of the structure that I tend to do. And I just want to point out, and again, there's many different ways of doing this, but here's my approach. There's timing on each of the headers, including ridiculous things like 14 minutes and 1 minute. Because what I don't want is someone to send it back to me and say, this adds up to 122 minutes, we only have them for 120 minutes. So I just, it's meant to show relative weight. I'm not sticking to that, but it's a helpful kind of estimation activity. And so you can sort of see, like, are we going to be able to get through all this, or do we have to make some prioritization changes here? I write questions in this sort of hyper-idealized version of how I might ask them. Tell us about your process and planning for that. Like, I'm never going to say it exactly like that, but it's sort of written as if this perfect robotic, well-spoken interviewer is doing it. I don't ever pick these up and read them, but the writing process, it helps me to kind of write them like that. And then there's sort of the follow-ups, and so sometimes there's stage directions in italics that say, ask about this, get them to show you that. Sometimes there's the why not? And you can get really, if you try to make it algorithmic, if they say this, then say why. If they say this, then say why not. Like, you can make yourself kind of crazy. So, just pick a reasonable level of detail. I don't necessarily need to remind myself to say why, or to say why not, but it sort of just kind of helps me when I'm writing to kind of throw those things in there. It makes it feel kind of more looser as a prompt for me. Interviewing isn't just interviewing, right? You're there with someone, you could do other things with them. It's kind of a platform. So your guide can include these sort of things. And sometimes they're activities that you just can start with as a question. Can you draw me a map of your computer network? Can you show me how I should make a Whopper? Can you show me how you update your playlists? Those are very similar, right? Teach me how to do it versus show me how you do it. Now, you can't teach me how to update your playlist, that's fairly personal. So that kind of is an easy filter there. But there's just different ways of coming at it. And either can be appropriate. The role-playing questions is one that, this is something that ended up being an improvisation that happened for us in the field. I don't necessarily put this into a field guide, but it's sort of a back-of-pocket methodology or a tool. I don't know what makes a methodology. But a thing that you can do. We were talking to this guy, and he was he was complaining. He was a guy that was just not very articulate. The interview began with him describing falling for a Nigerian 419 scam, and his rationalization. Of course, you have to rationalize this because it's an awful thing that happened. His rationalization was, well, I got so many of those, one of them had to be true. The poor guy, he's in the middle of going bankrupt, and we met him, and it was a tough thing. So this is a tough situation for this guy, and he was describing this customer service experience he had in his store. He just said, I'm not very happy about it. I said, what would you like to see different? I don't know. Well, what's some of the problems with it? I don't know. I said, okay, let's call you up. You be the store, and colleague, why don't you be participant? And we picked up the little phone, and we said ring ring. We really got a little silly with it, and he just said hello, and he demonstrated what he wanted the service experience to be, and then we asked him what he did, and he was able to tell us. Again, that's it's in the book now, but it wasn't any book when we did it. We just made it up. So you can continue to make things up. That's really why I'm telling you that. Well, I'll just hit part of this here. Participatory design is a great buzzword, and it's a rich and diverse method. I won't explain all of it here, but really what this is about, I think, for me, is asking people what they would do. How would you solve this problem? I like this or I don't like this versus I'm going to make it like this is a very different activity. And I think sometimes there's resistance to participatory design because the idea is that, oh, we're going to go build exactly, it's the Microsoft thing, we're going to build what people ask for. But really we're just trying to we're trying to help people talk about their needs, just like the role-playing activity. We're trying to give them another opportunity to talk about their needs. So when someone says, I want it to have a handle, what they're really saying is, I need a way to move it from place to place. Well, what if we put it in the cloud? What if we got really dark and mysterious? Late night LAUX. LAX dark. Now that the lights are on, now it doesn't work. You know, what if we put it in the cloud? What if we made it modular? What if we changed the weight distribution? What if we made it go around your waist? Those are all different ways that you could address what if it had a handle. And that ideation is what designers do. So we don't need to literally implement the handle. We need to understand what that refers to, and then come up with other kinds of solutions. This is a kind of a mini rant of mine, a little bit. Testing, I think, is a risky kind of thing to do, and what often happens. Testing isn't risky. Testing is not everything. Testing is at a certain point in the process, and sort of calling every time you expose an idea to someone, testing, that's the risky piece. So what often happens is the artifacts that are coming out of the design process are being shown to people, as opposed to creating specific things to show for research. So if you want to have a conversation about form factors and size, create a bunch of different stimuli. That's sort of the researchy kind of way of thinking about it. So what if you had the world's tiniest clamshell phone to kind of talk to people about visibility or ear canal damage or whatever the thing is you want to talk about? We're not going to make this phone. That's never going to happen. But to show it, and maybe show it some other things as well, that lets you have a conversation about the possible, you know, the impossible in kind of a possible way. And now you expose needs and expectations and interpretations that are beyond what you get if you just show them your best guess at a solution. So that, I think, is an important shift. I'd like to see people creating more things to show as opposed to ripping their designs out and just kind of bringing people in to look at them. Yeah, let's skip this. Oh, here's a good research story from this. This was a newsletter that we basically were testing some different comps of a credit card newsletter for Chevron, and this was many years ago. They mocked them all up, and you know, people talked about what ones they preferred. They talked about why. We got to their mental models around corporate communication and what was spam and what was junk mail. And anyway, the back of one of these was like Greek text. They had to really write the whole thing. So it was all the whole Lord Ipsum thing was in the back. And you know, this woman said like a perfectly appropriate thing where to help us remember that participants don't live in the world that we live in. She was, you know, supposed to really be looking at the front page, but she, you know, appropriately like picked it up and thumbed through it. She looked at the back, just like, oh, that's so great. It comes in a second language. Of course, right? For anybody else, that's what that looks like. It was just a great, you know. So your artifact. So this is great. They created an artifact to test, but there were some things in there that, you know, were backstage, and you know, that was a test of the artifact, you know, more than anything else. Yeah, we'll just skip these things here. We're gonna skip this here. Skip. So let's talk a little about culture. So question for you guys, I don't know how well people in the back can see. Here's a photograph of 3 really large dudes eating the world's largest hoagie sandwich together, as friends do. And the ad copy says, bring it on. So my question, and no one's ever got this, but I always like asking people, my question is, what's this an ad for? Sandwich? Tailgating party. NFL. What did you say? Deodorant. Deodorants. Gum.
And sanitizer.
Indigestion. I like where you guys are, this is an ad for low-flow toilets. No. Hey, it's the same reaction, right? Yeah, no. It's an ad for low-flow toilet. And so here, I mean, there's the normal line. How do we talk about toilets? We talk about, you know, how gleaming they are, you know, how wonderful your spa-like relaxation will be and all that. We don't talk about the fact that they handle poo, that that's their job and that's what they're designed for. We don't talk about poo, and people on the, you know, coming over to LAUX meetups don't usually stand in front of the room and say the word poo. Right, this is outside, yes?
Dump with friends.
Sorry?
It's dump with friends.
Dump with friends. Wow. If that doesn't exist, it does now, right? Somebody's already registered the domain. Yes, okay, very good. There's an old SNL commercial called Beloved Toilets, which I don't know if people remember that, but it's a really classic SNL. Anyway, so here's an example of normal here. I will talk about poo more in a second, but I do want to make my point. Why am I talking about poo? You know, this is culture you know, that we're experiencing. There's a set of rules that bind us together about what's in and what's out. And so when you step over that line, you know, you get a little bit of an alert. Advertisers want to do that. They want to get your attention. That's why they kind of create crazy things and provoke you that way. That's the work of advertising. But the work of us as kind of innovators, designers, researchers, and so on, is to look for these edges of culture and to try to understand what these rules are that are informing and constraining what people do and don't do. And it's not the same as what they will or won't do. That's kind of our job, to create things that will get over those barriers, but to understand what those barriers are now, what the kind of rules are. And that's not just in talking to people, that's in the artifacts that we see around us, in the media, when we're, you know, moving around from place to place. You know, we're always kind of looking for those things. So this is where kind of observance of culture kind of pays off. So I told this, actually, so I cut it out, but I had told this story before, and I walked outside in Toronto at a conference about 7 or 8 years ago maybe, and there was a public information sign that was really wanting people to pick up their doggy doo-doo, and it said, it showed a dead fish on the side of the, or gasping fish, and it said, dog poo ends up in the lake. And I just finished sort of talking about how we don't say poo, and there it was in the streets. Well, there was the sign, anyway. And then a couple of blocks later, someone had crossed out poo and written shit. So you could see kind of just the edges of culture being kind of played with. While I was saying that poo was sort of not to be accepted, it was being used. It was dog poo, so that's more acceptable than if it was like mine or yes, right, exactly, right. Next slide. Just tactically in the field, take a lot of photos. Photos are free now. When I started, we had to use film. I would take a 36 roll of film. I'd be really excited. Take a lot of pictures. You're going to see things in the pictures that you won't remember from the time that you're there. Pictures are a great way to give somebody a quick thumbnail of what happened in the field. This document is a shot list. There's an example on that resources page as well. You might need it, or you might give it to other people to help them support you in the field by taking pictures. I just want to hit the note-taking thing a little bit. This can be kind of a controversial topic. Some people really want to take notes in the field. You cannot take, unless you're a court reporter, and then even then, you cannot take fully accurate notes live. And if you're running the interview, forget it. Okay, it's more important to run the interview. Use a recording device. I see like a million within a foot of me that are like inexpensive and reliable. Use a recording device. You need the definitive recording of what that person said. What you write down and what you think you remember they're not wildly wrong, but they're heavily distorted. So, you know, just do yourself a favor. Some people like to take notes because it helps them process what's happening. That's okay, but make sure you don't do this. And I've seen people do this. Right, Like, don't privilege the notes. And then people come back and they say to me, hey Steve, I took 9 pages of notes. Like that's not my favorite thing to hear after an interview. I want to hear about what you and that person did. So, when you think about how to go about interviewing, when we get into a little bit of tactic and kind of a little bit of hand-wavy Northern California stuff, this is the relationship between the principles and the tactic. So, Gretzky, it used to be my Gretzky, but now it's your Gretzky. Not anymore, I guess, but it was all over when he was your Gretzky. That's all I know about sports, so I should probably just stop. It was actually his dad that said this, but it was attributed to him. What makes him so talented? He says, I don't skate to where the puck is, I skate to where the puck is going to be. And that became kind of the lore of Gretzky. Like that's, that stood in for everything about what made him so great. It wasn't about his gait or his stride or how he taped his stick. It was that. And it was like a hugely important principle. And so from those principles, you obviously can derive tactics from that. So I want to talk at a principle level, and I think it's more important that you guys, embrace these principles or some version of than, pick up tactics like Steve says, always wear an extra sock so this and this happens. Like that doesn't elevate our profession. I think thinking about it in a richer way is what I'm hoping to provide here. So here's the 4 that I have, and this is just kind of how I've structured it. And I'll talk about each in turn, and a little bit about how to do it. Check your worldview at the door, embrace how other people see the world, build rapport, and listen. So to check your worldview, you need to become aware of what your worldview is. So, you might sit everyone down and just say, what are all the things we think that we're going to see? Not that we need to prove later if we were right, and not that we need to agree that if you and you say something different, we need to agree on what the hypothesis is. It's just a dump. It's just kind of getting it out of your system. And once you say it out loud or write it on stickies, then it's less tightly held, and now you're freer to see something else. That's kind of at a project level. At the interview level, there's something that happens when you kind of go from what you're doing in the world to going into being with somebody. And I call it a transition ritual, and that might just be to say, hey, for the next hour, we're going to talk about Doug. But just to get all that business and project and design to speak out of your head and just orient yourself. And I worked with a client last month who said that she had taken people out of the field, and before she went in, she rang a bell and had everyone listen to the bell. It's a classic meditation mindfulness thing, right? Just focus on the bell, beginner's mind, and she didn't even kind of over-explain it to them. She's like, let's just listen to the bell. I love that she did that and that her colleagues were willing to let her do that. I would be really nervous, but I'm so inspired by that. But it marks everything from before you go into the interview to being in the interview. And so that's just about, setting aside your thing, and that sets you up for the next thing, which is embracing their thing. And I chose the word embrace really important, to be an important one. I didn't just say tolerate how they see the world. I mean, you want to just, get and hold on to so tightly your thing. Tactically, go to the bathroom. And, it doesn't have to be poo. Although I didn't want to bring up poo again because it's been 3 minutes. Go to the bathroom. I don't know why I'm doing this. Let's see. Another thing about bodily functions I want to tell you about. You need to make sure you're not distracted. You want to be present for them. And so eat, don't rush, maybe plenty of time to get caught in traffic. You just want to show up in the right state so you can be ready to embrace their thing. And here's an interesting one, I think. Asking questions that you think you know the answers to. That's a hard thing to do. When are your taxes due? Everyone knows when taxes are due, so you don't want to ask that question because you might look like an idiot. And that person like, well, why are you asking me that? That actually, the fear you have in asking that question is about you. So you need to kind of own that fear, and it's okay. This is why it's hard to interview people that you know, by the way. When's the last time you took a vacation? I know when you took a vacation because I sat for your cats. It's really hard to ask questions in an authentic way and not shortcut yourself and say, well, I know you went on vacation, da 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 da. So, the equivalent here is like, well, I know taxes are due, April 15th. So here's my next question. Just to ask that question and kind of let the rest of it unfold, because sometimes you hear surprises. Well, we do an extension, so I file and pay, but I don't really have to finalize my filing until later on. So, I guess I didn't know what it was. But if you have to get yourself into that state to embrace their thing. The third one is rapport, and I think this is tricky for people. And this is a very personal thing. Rapport is that connection you have with someone. When your interview is over, they are totally jazzed and you are totally jazzed. So when they say thank you, and they're surprised when they get the incentive from you, and they like want to keep going, that's because you've established the rapport. And if you do that, then everything else kind of happens from that. So you can hurt rapport and you can kind of facilitate rapport. Too much small talk is, for most people, I've seen people who can make it work, and there's an example, I think, in the book from a woman in your community, Julie Pagard, who was going to come tonight, but couldn't, who sort of just does sort of small talk, and suddenly the interview is happening, but it might take 30 minutes. It doesn't sort of formally launch. At the same time, too much small talk and not enough small talk, they're both kind of killers. When someone asks you if they can get you a glass of water or some coffee, you might just say yes to kind of do the social ritual. In my earliest days, we would not take that because we wanted to be low impact and really not impose. Like, I don't want to impose. And we talked to some woman for like an hour, and she was just so tense and so uncomfortable. And like in the middle of the interview, she said, "Would you like a glass of water?" And something just clicked for us. We just said yes. And she went and served us a glass of water. And she knew how to be a host. And we were not letting her be a host because we wouldn't take the glass of water. And it just like completely opened up. So I kind of learned that the hard way. Yes?
About small talk. I find that you start off with small talk, but then you also have to go through all of this stuff, like, here's who we are, here's where we're from, can I set up this video camera,
Right. There's a lot of business when you come in, right? Right. I think you can kind of interleave those a little bit, and if I come in with somebody else, there's sort of a few things going on. Sometimes, like, I'll be the guy with the tripod and the forms, and they'll be sitting there saying, like, what's this neighborhood like? Oh, no, we saw, a pancake house on the way in. And then, they sort of see when I'm done with my stuff, and then I say, hi, I've got a little bit of paperwork for you. So that's one way that you kind of divide and conquer the roles a little bit. I think, kind of coming in, even that crossing the threshold moment, should we take off our shoes and like, oh, this is the cat, oh, isn't he cute, what's his name? Kind of the things that you do on your way to, oh, let's sit down here. That's when they're going to ask you for the glass of water. That's when you're going to start pulling out your form. So it's kind of, smushed together. I'm sure that's probably what you're doing anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Curious. It's awkward, all the things I work for this company.
Right. That stage of crossing the threshold is like really, really complicated. Right. It's just a lot of logistics and a lot of sort of newness and managing everybody's feelings and figuring out where you're going to sit and all the paperwork and all that is. Right. And to sort of throw small talk in there at the same time.
I use small talk as a lead into what the talk is about. And told them before the phone. And I used to introduce myself and kind of get them to relax. So the small talk isn't too personal. It's very much about what's going on. But it's very informal.
Yeah.
And that's especially true in homes and in women.
Yeah. The point was that she's using small talk as a way to kind of sort of start off the interview and set up the expectations and then explain what she's there for, and really good for homes and especially in women-to-women situations. Right, you're sort of, there's kind of increasing formality until you actually start the interview sort of is ramping up with small talk to kind of handle the logistics. That's really good.
I had a question kind of related to that.
I was just curious if you could talk about how much you shift as you might read someone in the way who they are.
How much you might shift your own persona, your question, your approach.
Yeah, I mean, the rapport is not a fixed thing. I think part of what you're doing the whole interview is just trying to figure out how to connect with that person. Yeah. Let me get to that through something else here. This is a classic one, I think, for introverts versus extroverts. How much you talk about yourself. And so my caution here is you may hear things that get you excited in terms of thinking about how you're going to connect with them, Like, my favorite show is, or I'm excited about this new Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., what's it called? This new S.H.I.E.L.D. show that's going to be on. I'm really excited about that. And you're all like, yes, how are they going to bring Clark Gregg back to life because he died in the Avengers movie, da 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 da. You know, you're like totally into this and you've been thinking about it and tweeting about it, and you have that OMG reaction, and you want to like, you think like, oh, here's how I can connect with this person by like, me and you, we have all this in common. That is a thing to be used sparingly. Now, extroverts may have a different tactic because their personality defaults are different than for an introvert. But in general, I'll say that, you know, hold back on sharing about yourself. You can build rapport by being interested in them. Now, that's not what we do when we interact with each other. We try to match. Like, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, you have this, I have that. You like this, I like that. Right? That's a great social way to make a connection. But you can just hold on that, and it's even kind of like a little sort of slightly masochistic thing when you have that impulse, like I want to say that I know this too, and to not do it, and just like have that little kind of anxious feeling. I had this happen. This is John. This is getting to me a little bit. I interviewed this woman. So the reason to say it is share something about yourself if you think it will help them kind of unlock. Is it important to help them? So I don't know if I'm shifting, but I'm sort of constantly looking for opportunities to establish rapport, and one tactic for that is what I share. So I talked to someone a few weeks ago who was a case manager for people that are on parole for like drug violations. And my girlfriend is a case manager for inpatient psychiatry. And so as soon as she says case manager, I'm like, oh, my girlfriend's a case manager, right? Yeah, no, that's the no thing. Now that's the yes thing too. Oh, okay, the face expression. I was like, oh yeah, I want to tell her that. I want to tell her that. And I'm like, well, no, it's not the time to tell her that. We got about an hour and a half into the interview, and she says, we have like a really dark sense of humor, and so we say these kind of horrible things, and that's how we kind of get through it. But I don't know if I did the right thing or not, but that's when I revealed that my girlfriend works in the same field, and that her colleagues all have that thing. And so my attempt there was to she was sort of trying to explain something that she didn't think we would understand, and I was just trying to normalize it by saying, I know what that is. So that's different than like, I like that show too. It was this weird thing that you're saying, I get it. I don't know, I probably could have gotten away without doing it, but I sort of saw an opportunity, and I went back and read it over. It didn't look that bad. So I don't know, it's sort of some of what you're kind of asking about is that. And then this also, I think, speaks to your question here. Sometimes you do these interviews with people, and at the beginning, it's kind of like going with the water. How long have you lived here? 3 years. What kind of things are important to your family? Camping. What are the things you like about this printer? The ink is inexpensive. Like, you never really, like, when is this interview going to start? You'd be like 25 minutes really uncomfortable, right? This person's not giving you any cues that they're interested in having you talking to them. And so you start freaking out, like, I'm going to have to leave, I don't know what to do with this person. The thing to do is to just, kind of act as if this is great, like, great, okay, thank you, and okay, oh, let's talk about this. Oh, I have another question here. Earlier you said that, just to kind of keep the good rapport going. And what happens is, this is kind of the idealized graphic there, and in the back, I don't know if you can kind of see, but it's just like the scribbly version of like question, answer, question, story. I don't know if what happens is a magical moment, but there's often a point for me where I realize, oh, well, we're getting stories now. We're at that point in the interview where they're telling stories. And that's kind of when you know that you've got to the rapport. The challenge of this is I don't know if it's 2 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour or 19 minutes. I don't know when that's going to happen. The coping strategy is just to kind of be patient and tolerant and kind of accept their thing and continue to follow up and listen. John, how do we do with your question? Perfect. Okay. So listening. When we're kids, we're taught to listen with our ears open and our mouths shut. But actually, as an interviewer, you do a lot of question asking, and you do it in a way that shows that you're listening. And the best interview, and it's really sort of an impossible ideal, is where you ask one question, like, tell me about who lives here, or tell me about your house or something. And then the whole interview just kind of falls out as follow-up. You're not really like asking questions. It just kind of, you know, you have to be very deft, but sometimes it kind of just comes out in follow-ups. And people love follow-up questions. It says that you're interested in what they're saying. So you can be active in asking questions and listening. This is what makes for great questions. If you have to move around and go back to something that didn't happen, you know, you're running out of a certain topic, this is when you say like, okay, this is great, I think we've talked about you know, everything kind of with your family right now. I want to focus now on something new, let's move over to this other topic. So you're not just doing the Barbara Walters thing where it's like, what kind of tree would you be? What color do you like your shoes to be? Like that's just, there's no conversation there. So, you know, weaving or kind of signaling your transitions tells people that you're listening, and that's where you just get a really great response. And we don't do this. This is not social talking. So that makes it hard, but it also makes it a really amazing gift that you give people when you do this. And you're awarded with a really great conversation. Your body is a way to signal to the other person that you're listening or that you're not listening. But your body is also a way to signal to yourself. There's a great Malcolm Gladwell thing called a piece called The Naked Face that's in Blink, and he describes these researchers that were trying to map muscles of their face to which emotions were tied to which muscles, and they were moving their face muscles around. And the researchers noticed that on the days they were doing sad emotions, you know, frowny faces with their muscles, with their fingers, they went home feeling sad. And so Gladwell talks about, well, we can actually induce emotion into our body as opposed to our body expressing the emotion that exists inside. So sit like you're listening, and you will be more in a state where you're listening. That's my theory there. This is the slide here where a good interviewer can become a great interviewer, and a mediocre interviewer can become a good, I messed that up, but whatever level you're at, do this and you'll be up one more. And this is really hard, and it's stupid for me to describe it, but it is really, really hard. And this is, you know, this is about silence. So the first thing is not to put the question answers in the question itself. So here's the classic one. What did you have for breakfast today? Did you have toast or juice or cereal or eggs or... And we think we're being helpful. We're suggesting some options. That will help the other person. We're doing a good job. Actually, you're making it harder for them because you're giving them a framework and asking them to perform within that framework. And people will. And you might think, well, people can just say, no, I didn't have any of those things. I had a turkey club. That's harder for them. And the more you do that, that accumulates over the interview to them just eventually pleasing you. Because you keep telling them what you want them to do. And eventually they will do that. And they won't tell you things outside that. And it sounds weird, but it's totally what happens. So the other thing that I did in that example is I said toast and juice, and then I said and you can totally hear the ... in your language. And that is about the fear. Because when you ask the question, when you say, what did you have for breakfast? And you stop, there's like a moment of just panic. Because you don't know what they're gonna do. So the long questions, the run-on questions, the suggestions, the ... that's all about you holding on as long as possible to that question so that you don't have to have that silence where the other person might talk or might not talk or might give you some kind of weird look, and you might have to face the fear or discomfort of the fact that you're running an interview and you really don't know what you're doing. Right, all that's kind of going on. And so you have to just kind of be brave and give your brain something else to do and just, you know, kind of ask the question, what did you have for breakfast today? And then if you have to go inside your head and say like, let's be silent, 1, 2, 3, I like cheese, whatever you have to do to kind of distract yourself so you can occupy your monkey brain so it doesn't have to kind of make your lips move. It's really, really hard to do, okay? I mean, it sounds stupid and you will hear yourself doing it and you'll try not to do it and you'll get better at it. The other thing is that people speak in paragraphs. So when you say, what did you have for breakfast today? The person says, yeah, a turkey club today, and it was really good, and I took half of it for lunch, and it was, you know, something that I just really like, turkey club. I eat it 3 times a day. And they stop. Because they don't know what to do. And if you say, what kind of tree would you be, you're done, right? If you say, if you do this, nod, or you can even just nod with your, widen your eyes, or go, or just whatever, or just lean forward, any kind of thing that says I'm listening, or you can even do nothing, just a blank face. You can even do that, and people will keep going. And the thing about the Turkey Club is, you know, my family raises organic turkeys, and I will not eat them because I love them and I give them names. Like, something else is going to come that they're not done. They just don't know how much you want to know about their freaking Turkey Club that they had for breakfast, right? So you're interested. So just let them know that it's okay to continue by just giving them a little bit of reassurance. So you're doing almost nothing. Like this whole slide is about pulling way the hell back on the question and on your next question and just doing almost nothing and kind of the things that happen. This will really improve what you do, and it's really hard. George?
In sales, they talk about when you ask the closing question, he who speaks next buys the product.
That's great. That's the same sort of social pattern.
So the salesman carries on and pulls the product back.
We're closing in on the end here, so just a quick story here. Use the language that people use, not the language that you want to use. This can have a huge impact. I interviewed somebody a few years ago, super house proud dad, had the whole family there, described his technology setup. We're in the house, it was all about home entertainment, and it was, you know, all these great things about how the family was connecting through entertainment, and these devices were chosen to have a really wonderful time together and help the kids grow. By the way, one thing we don't have in this house is TiVo. I've chosen not to get TiVo. We don't want to have TiVo. And my client, who is, you know, engineer by training, I don't know if this is true anymore, but as I recall it, I can just think about him just like wincing physically every time the guy said TiVo. Because that's not what it's called, right? And so I asked a follow-up question. I know you guys know where the story is going. I asked a follow-up question, and I asked about TiVo, because that's what he called it. And later on, my client asked a follow-up question about TiVo. And he didn't do it deliberately. Like, you know that in his head, he heard TiVo, and when he stored it in memory, he translated it, because that's what it's called. So he has a memory of, the guy doesn't have TiVo. So he wasn't correcting him deliberately, but that's the impact that it had. And the whole power dynamic in the room changed. This guy basically was lost face in front of his family by some people that came into his house that know more about what stuff is than he does. It's a really simple thing, and again, really hard. And this, I mean, my client, loveliest man in the world, would be aghast if he knew that I tell the story about him. Because he would never want to do this to anybody.
Yeah, it's streaming.
It's streaming. Hey, how's it going? Rob. Yeah, so I mean, just, you know, not only should we not go and talk like douchebags to people with our, you know, fourth quarter projection, you know, consumption occasion or whatever we're talking about, we should just also talk how they talk. When they give us cues as to how they talk, we should speak like that to them again. This is a great one. It's, you know, especially if you're having people that are using your product and you go out there and you watch them struggle to use your product, or have them say things like, you know, it'd be great if there was like some set of videos in there that would show us how to use it, and you're going like, there is. This is one of the things that can ruin the interview. If you give in to taking their questions, because they'll try like, do you have a thing where I could do this and this and this? Or I really wish there was. And if you answer that question, interview is over. You now have the world's most expensive tech support house call. You can't get that power dynamic back once they, I mean, I could recover from the TiVo thing. I can't recover from this. The interview is over for the most part. Go ahead. Yes, happily. We're there for them to be the experts. We want to understand their world. And, you know, I mean, it's the classic researcher question, right? When someone says, you know, could it have a set of videos that we would watch? You know, the classic researcher answer is like, would you want it to have a set of videos that you would watch? Or where would you expect to look to find those? You know, to never start taking on the role of like, we know what it's going to have, You know, well, the third quarter release will probably have that. That's probably a 3.0 release where we're going to have that. That changes the dynamic where now you're not asking them, they're asking you. And sometimes it feels good because you can kind of have like, you know, I want to put my leg up. You can kind of have one of these like user brainstorm sessions, you know, and suddenly like we're like knowing everything and talking about it. It feels good because we've been thinking about all this and we can play all that out. Sometimes it's kind of like the how much would you pay question. Sometimes you can choose to release kind of into the interview, you know, a hypothesis or a design or an idea, but you have to do it in a very controlled way so that you're seeking their reaction, not that you're kind of telling them what it's going to be. And when you do this, they're just going to start asking more questions, right? And so they should, right? And it's just like the title thing. The roles have shifted. Now you know about the answers. And previously, we want them to know about the answers. I think that's really kind of the key of it. If these are your customers and you want to help them, when you're all done, when you're wrapping up, say, by the way, like I noticed this and this and this, would you want me to show you? Try to do that if you think it's good for them, not for you. If you want to drive a certain kind of adoption and you wish people were using your pet feature, it's not a chance to sell to them. But if you think you can kind of leave them better than you found them, after the interview is over, by all means, please do that. So there's a thing here that happens, and just with that breakfast example, you can sort of see it, that, you know, it's okay if you can't read that, it's just sort of a dialogue where you ask one question, the person says a whole paragraph, and while they're speaking, you're thinking like, oh, what about that? And that reminds me of something else, and let me clarify that. And then you go, and they say another paragraph, and you generate a bunch of other questions. So suddenly, the tree is unmanageable, right? And so you have to make a decision. What's my next question? What is my next question going to be? And I don't have a magic solution for you, but here's some coping techniques. Sometimes if you just wait and don't pursue it, those things will emerge in the conversation anyway. Make quick notes, like, a couple of keywords that you want to come back to and clarify. Then you can triage. What's most pressing for your topic? If you don't care about 3 of the things that you don't understand, and you only have so much time, you should go for the thing that seems most relevant. Again, it's a triage thing. Or what makes the best follow-up? What's the best way to tell that person that you're listening? I had this happen, the same guy who wouldn't ask the corny magic genie question, great interviewer, but he did these really interesting things. Where he was interviewing this guy, and the guy said something about, it was about his taxes, he says, so I complete all the work, and I get all the documents ready, and I bring them over to the CPA, and then I have the panic attack. And this guy let that go. And he said, I want to move on to clarifying what some of those documents are. And, when that guy said, I have a panic attack, that was a little test, right? He's like, I'm going to expose myself, make myself vulnerable. This is me opening really open my jacket. He's making himself vulnerable, and that's a little test. Like, can I trust you to cherish my sensitive feelings? And the guy ignored it, and that's like a small slap. That's begging to be said. Well, what is it about the panic attack? Like, he didn't say anything about it. I came back to it like 30 minutes later to kind of close it up. So there's kind of, that's what trumps everything, I think, is what's the best way. When someone gives you emotional language, that's an invitation to follow up. And it might be uncomfortable for us, we might want to leave it alone, but that actually is what you have to cover. So that's kind of the ultimate triage there. And just kind of as a side note, I guess a side notes on side notes, is these exploding questions, when suddenly there's so much to do, and there's the devices and their battery life and the timing and the dog is licking you and all this stuff. Like, it's a lot to balance in the field. It can be kind of a panic mode. Sometimes for me, and I don't know how to make this happen, sometimes it happens, it's a flow state. People have been in flow states, right? It's like super creative. For me, it's kind of like the jump to hyperspace where, the animation effect of going faster than light was kind of this sort of slow drawing of the lines. Like for me, I'm half a step out of body, and I have all the time in the world to think about all these complicated things. And I'm so into what they're saying, and I'm so also planning what I'm gonna do and making decisions about whether or not to mention my girlfriend, man. It becomes this like really interesting state that is a consequence of all the complexity. It kind of builds and builds and builds, and then suddenly like, whoa. I don't know how to make this happen, and I don't know how to make it happen for you, but like, you know, if next time it does, you'll be like, Steve said that, and he used a Star Wars reference. Here's a way to learn. I'm really getting close to wrapping up here. This might be the penultimate slide. Penultimate. Not everyone says penultimate enough, right? It's not just all poo jokes with me. There's also the word penultimate.
And out-of-body experience.
And out-of-body experience, yeah. We've kind of covered everything. Sorry? Flow state, yeah. Yeah, that's everything here. Here's a great way to learn and get better at this, is just talk about the shit that happens in the field. Because shit happens, right? It's a really messy experience. People are messy, things are out of control. I will point you to my website where we have a series of war stories written by all kinds of different people. I've written one, but I've curated all the rest of them. They are, in turns, tragic, hilarious. Has anybody seen these? Yes. Okay, some people have seen them. This means show your hands, by the way. That's what universal presenter language for show your hands if you see them. Yeah, they're really, really interesting, and you know, I think, and then what I hear from people is they learn from reading them, and it's not like there are lessons in all of them. I mean, one person tells a story about locking her keys in the car with the engine on. Like, well, what's the sort of lesson? Don't lock, you know, bring an extra set of keys. Like, I mean, it's just, this is just what happens. And some of them are just sad, and some of them are frightening, and some of them you may be more critical of the interviewer and the story than they intend for you to be. Like, they're just really cool. And if you have one, I would, you know, check them out, and, you know, follow up with me. I want more. I think this is for the community to have these. The story here, this is one of my favorite ones. This was Dan who recreated this for me. It's not an actual picture of it, but he was interviewing someone, and the guy was talking about the digital divide. He was very passionate about it. And Dan was standing in front of this guy sitting on the couch, and he realized there's just some power in the body language. And the guy was giving this really great speech, and Dan used to be a filmmaker, and so you get that sense of when the Oscar moment is, and you're like, sometimes you go in for that part of the conversation. And so he kneels down to be, you know, the same level of the guy, and as soon as his knee touches the ground, he's like, cat pee. The carpet was soaked with cat pee, and you know, poor Dan kneeled in cat pee. And it's not a poo joke, though. And so he stands up, but then because he's not going to keep kneeling in the pee, but then he realizes that he's got a big wet stain on his knee, and he doesn't want the guy to see the stain because then he's going to feel bad. So he wants to continually maintain, you know, the same power dynamic, you know, with the guy and not be kind of over him. So he does this kind of like half stance thing where he's kind of holding his wet knee in front of his other knee to, you know, to not let him see this, and conducts the rest of the interview, leaves, you know, has another interview after that, runs to the gas station, you know, washes off and dries with that hair dryer, and then goes into the next interview, and he swears that he has like stink lines, you know, from the comics coming off of his knee, and the next house is like immaculate, like everything is white and a great carpet, and he's just so aware that he smells like cat pee. There's nothing for it, and there's not, and therefore we should, right? It's not really what it's about. It's just about exchanging these stories and getting them out there, not having, you know, designers and UX and research people always talking about, here's how I succeeded and I created the new this and this breakthrough, but just for us to talk about the things that happen, I think is a way to just continually develop the practice by just sharing these stories. And I think that is me rambling at length. And there's already a hand.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So while I think Jessie gets to ask the first question because I had asked her, she wanted to ask it while you were speaking. I had asked her not to interrupt because I didn't want to break your flow. And so poor Jessie had to wait all this time. But while Jessie asks her question, Jody, would you come over? We have something to entice you to continue talking, and you talked about flow state, and poo and pee and everything but.
I don't like where this is going.
Oh,
Okay.
we have something for you.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much for your talk. I have a question in terms of any tips you might have going forward for the future, specifically doing user research around cross-channel or pervasive computing types of technologies. And if that's not fair, you can tell me, we can talk about it later.
Just say like one thing by what you mean by that.
So what I mean by that is, one of the things that I think we talk a lot about, at least in this community, is the idea of moving from device-specific engagements into more cross-channel. I need to have a consistent experience across my mobile platform, my desktop platform, the kiosk at the airport. So we're talking about the idea of how would you...
I knew you would need to recoup from Jess's question. This is everything about it.
All right. I'm supposed to eat this ice cream?
Yes.
Eat it while you answer.
That's the sweet spot. Right.
That's the sweet spot.
Wow. Thank you for the ice cream. It's good. Right, I mean, I guess part of it is, there's a couple of levels. One is, how do you think about the thing that you're studying? Is the thing that you're studying the technologies that people are interfacing with, or is the thing that you're studying like at a higher level? Like,
sure, so like around experience design as opposed to just necessarily like a device-specific engagement.
or even, you know, make it about the person. Like, it could be about media consumption, or it could be about, you know, the daily nomadic life, or it could be about travel, or it could be about, like, what's the thing that the person is doing that these different technologies are in support of? And I don't know, maybe your thing is just so broad that doesn't kind of work, but, you know, you might come up with, you know, 5 or 6 kind of common behavior, like activities of daily life. You know, what's the multi-device, multi-channel aspect of family life? You know, and follow a bunch of people and kind of inventory or diary the different devices they have, and how does a family unit kind of use those things? Or you might talk about, you know, what's entertainment consumption looking like, you know, in a multi-device thing, and sort of look at how people are, you know, playing casual games, and how, you know, whatever sort of behaviors that fall under that. But if you kind of level it up to the people thing, then you can kind of design some methods around that. Does that start to flip it?
I think so.
Okay. I know.
No, go for it. I'll wait.
I don't have enough hands. I think it's still melting. It's good. We're good.
All right, so I have a somewhat specific question. Related to ice cream, as it were. So for one of the challenges that we've come across is comparing different types of designs on a mobile device, right? So when you're talking about flow, you may have 3 different designs where you need people to kind of compare 3 very nuanced differences and then ask them through memory to tell you what they prefer or talk about it. And we've tried kind of showing it to them simultaneously. We've tried actually printing them out so they can see it side by side, but the flow always seems to somehow get interrupted. So do you have any kind of tips or recommendations for the best way to navigate when you're showing nuanced differences between designs to get that feedback?
I'll answer what sounds like I'm answering a different question, but it might, let's make sure we get it back to what your question is. There's a great paper from the 90s called What Do Prototypes Prototype? Anyone read this paper? It's called What Do Prototypes Prototype? And it goes back to what I was saying about stimulus, like the tiny phone. And the paper's point, the author's point, which they articulate in the paper, is that there are 3 different things that you can represent in a prototype and that you can therefore test, or vice versa. One is the role. So what's it like to have this thing in my life? The other is the essentially the visual design, how it's presented, and the other is how it works, so the interaction. And you know, they kind of caution you against, you can't create a prototype that captures all of those. So part of this that comes back to your thing is like, what's the question that you have? Is it how it works? Is it how it looks? Is it what it kind of brings to people? And then but that still falls under either how it looks or how it works. I think is probably the two that you're looking at. So thinking about prototypes that, and maybe they aren't literal prototypes. Maybe it's not. It sounds like you're trying to do sort of A/B testing kind of thing without letting people actually have those experiences. So maybe you want to magnify the differences, kind of cartoonize it a little bit, and you know, to kind of provoke a conversation about that. I mean, I think you're trying to simulate something and get a real response in an artificial way, and that seems like it's not working for you. So maybe you have to try to answer a different question that still can help you move forward with your designs. Angel is so patiently waiting.
Angel had a question, and after Angel we have time for another question, and then we need to wrap it up. And I see a hand up there.
Hi Steve, thank you for being here and sharing all this wisdom tonight. I wanted to ask about when you have different teams doing the research from the team doing the design. Obviously it's best when, I believe it's best when it's the same team so they can absorb and kind of empathize and take all of the research to heart. What are some methods for overcoming it? Because I've found that the richness of the interview is sometimes lost when you just watch the playback from the interview and you're not physically there to smell the cat pee.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that loss of fidelity in the interview quality so that the empathy carries through all of the other richness?
Yeah, I think one thing that we try to do is make everybody aware of what's happening all the way along. So trying to bring even just names into the team. So this is a very simple thing that we'll do at the end of every day in the field. We'll write a one paragraph. Like my goal is always to write it as fast as I can kind of think and type. We met Joan, she's 28, she lives in a new subdivision and she has a blah, 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 does this and this and this and this. It's not actionable, it's not conclusion, but it's a quick storytelling thing. You could attach a couple of pictures to it, you know, and send it out to the broader team. And so when field work is happening, there's just stories that come in. It seems low value because there's not anything actionable in it, but I've had people tell me how excited they are to get these things. And it starts to spawn some hallway conversations. And so if you're out in the field with somebody and you're not and this person doesn't go, the person you took talks to that person and they say, oh, I saw that email. Like, it's just very gentle kind of seeding of these are real people and they have names. It's not just, you know, personas, God forbid, or other kinds of things that don't have that empathy in them. So kind of engaging everyone in just a little bit of casual storytelling can help a little bit. So that's one thing. If there's a shared workspace or, you know, the walls of your workspace, putting up faces with names on them, you know, it can be just that. It doesn't have to be, you know, what segment they're in or what product they own, even just kind of that. I think it just starts to create some kind of casual cultural awareness of the people and who they are. That's part of it. And sort of the general theme there is looking for low fidelity, increasingly higher fidelity ways to report all the way along, so that, you know, design team is not in the field, but design team is, and I realize this introduces other problems. The design team is copied in on the interview guide, sees the interview schedule, sees the screener, or whatever, you know, choosing which things that it is, so that they're kind of on the project, even if they aren't in the field with you. And then using these kind of casual things that you know, bring real people into it. You know, and then maybe that one thing we do is we do a reporting activity after we're done with the interviews, but before we have any conclusions. So it's more of a summary. Here's kind of the 12 topics that we're hearing about. We don't know we haven't got final recommendation, we have no kind of recommendation, but it's it kind of caps field work and sort of launches synthesis. So there's no analysis almost that goes into it. It's kind of collation is the activity, really. And I think there's a sample top line in that set of resources. So you can see sort of at what level of fidelity it is. So again, it's not great, but it engages them. And so, you know, if I were you guys, I would get the design team to hear where we're at before we go into the analysis. and spend an hour kind of talking about. So it's a bit of stories and a bit of patterns, but not any conclusions. So that way, I'm trying to avoid throwing it over the wall. So you're kind of ramping it up with bits, you know, kind of greater and greater pieces that are not the investment of time that the field work would be.
Thanks.
There was one last question right there.
Still frozen.
Hi, so when you go to interview these people at their homes, sometimes there's be more than one person at the home. It sounds like this is mainly focused on one person, but you have the family there, or you have the spouse, and so forth. How do you focus interviews in that case, and try to not have each other's answers affect each other?
That's great. We will choose what we're going to do. I mean, sometimes we'll say we want to meet with one person, and sometimes we'll say if your spouse is available, we'd like to meet with them as well. So it depends on kind of what we're planning. Interviewing people that know each other is preferable to me than interviewing people that don't know each other. Like, I don't want to talk to a bunch of, I don't want to do a focus group kind of bunch of strangers thing. But couples are kind of interesting. There are power dynamics that exist within those couples. I've done, parents and kids, or husbands and wives, and so interesting things happen where, they contradict, or there's kind of something that's not stated. You can usually see what that is. And sometimes we'll say, well, we might split up for kind of a chunk of it as well if we think we're just not going to get to hear because they're not fully comfortable. I think the best thing I want to do, it's kind of that thing where it tips from question, answer to question story. The multiple participant thing is you want to kind of tip into where they talk. What kind of iced tea do you like? What kind of iced tea do you like? Do you like to add sugar? Do you like that's not what you want to have. You want to kind of have a conversation. And so, you can ask the first person, you can do almost nothing and see if the other person will kind of answer. And then the first person will say, well, that's true because he likes this and this and this. So you're trying to your rapport building is more kind of triangular. And so the thing to do is to kind of avoid asking everybody the same question. And that's sort of the simplest. That's sort of the simplest I can make it standing up here. Does that help?
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Steve, for being with us tonight.
Thanks, everybody.
There's going to be some drawings right now, which I will shut up and pass the mic to Marcella. And
again, we're not drawing anything. So.
We're not drawing. By the way, I got an email, I got a question for you via text that I took the liberty to respond. It was someone in Orange County who was following us via live stream, and they wanted to know what flavor the ice cream was, so I told them.
Okay, yeah.
But Marcella's gonna do drawings, and Christian there is gonna help out with people that have copies of Steve's book that want to get it signed. So thank you again.
Thanks, everybody. Where are we gonna do that?
Okay, everybody ready? Have your tickets out. I'm Marcella. I'm Executive Director of UXPA. Yuzi, Crystal, Alexa of the Book Club. Yeah. Okay, well, first drawing for the book.
467110.
Woo! Let's go fast. 467110. If you're not here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, next ticket. Okay.
Okay. 467067.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Next one. 467090.
090. Get your tickets. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay. 467070.
5, 4, 3, 2, done. Go.
467-109.
109.
Where'd you guys people go?
Come on, you guys.
Okay. 467-062.
Somebody. You got it. Come on up. Okay, yay, got a winner. Next one.
Okay. 467-121.
121. Got it.
Yay!
Yay!
Yay! Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. 467-055.
Yay! So how many books do we have left? That's it? Okay, now we're drawing for the mugs filled with goodies.
They're so amazing. There's a Starbucks card. There's a Starbucks card inside, some sweets, and a really beautiful mug from Syndicate Blue.
Yay!
I didn't know they were bringing these.
Yay!
Okay, 467-106.
106. You got it. Come on up. Starbucks. Yay!
Okay, 467-074.
You got it. Come on up.
I'm picking better numbers. 467-108.
108. Yay! Okay.
467-107.
107. Yay!
Yay!
So I think they're all 467.
Okay, yeah. I'll cut out the 467. 064.
064. Come on up. Yay!
Any more? Keep going. 126.
126.
126.
Go next.
No. Okay. 104.
104.
104. Three more. Four more. Okay. 101.
101. Yay! 101. 101. 101.
Okay,
Got it.
101. We're ending shortly. 051.
051. Check your tickets. 051.
No.
No.
Okay.
Good.
052. What? 084.
084. Yay! Come on.
Yay! 119.
119. 119. Having an option here. Going once, going twice. Done. Next number.
096.
096.
There you go.
Yay! Got it.
Last one.
That's it.
One more. One more?
Oh, that was done. That was done.
No.
One more.
One more.
Last one.
118.
Yay! 118. 118. Going, gone. Sold.
Okay, 117.
117. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. This was great to have you guys. You guys are an awesome part of the community. We love seeing your faces as often as we can, so come to more events.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that we had the book club here. Well,
Yes.
we had a lot of different organizers here. We consider ourselves a family, so yeah.
Remember, pay your parking before you go to your car.